Hey guys, Felix here, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how to make better decisions. This is something that I think it's very applicable to a lot of us, and especially for me, just because how I make certain decisions have gotten me to where I am today. And obviously, I can make better decisions moving forward to kind of like get to the next level, advance into the next level. But it's just being aware of the decision making process, what affects it, understand the why, kind of like the cores behind it, and then pretty much the mental model that I personally, um, use, and then want to also, add on to, some of the components that I've been revamping over time just to optimize how to make better decisions because at the end of the day, the quality of your life is the sum of your choices, and the choices are pretty much based on the quality of the decisions that you make. And to understand how to have a better life, a better business, a better overall kind of like, again, life, you need to understand what causes you to really think of those actions, those decisions, and those habits that ultimately affects the choices that you make that can either lead you that way or to this path. And then sometimes, it can lead you to a, more of a dark path if you're not aware of it, right? And sort of like the overview for today is just understanding that principle on a macro level, and then going into a quote that I been, really using this as kind of like my principle and philosophy in life for the past, 3 years, and then breaking down a formula and then a three-part system that helps me overall, you know, um, kind of like the mental frameworks that I use to kind of like make better decisions in the future and as of right now, right? So starting with this quote, I like Mahatma Gandhi. I'm a big fan of him. But pretty much this quote really stood out to me in the past 3 years. And every time I get into a rut, I always kind of look back at this quote to really understand and kind of reflect and understand the core of why I'm feeling that way, or what, my current life situation and what led to that in the first place, and what can I do to kind of improve upon that, right? So basically, it's your belief become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and then your values pretty much becomes your destiny, which is the choices that you make for yourself to your current state of where you're at in your life, right? So in the core of it, your beliefs is things that you believe in. Rather, it's your belief system, what you grow up with, the philosophy, your outlook in life. And a lot of that kind of like translate to how you perceive stuff. So every time you think of certain stuff, you can think of it in a negative or a positive way. And that really affects the words and the self talk that you put on yourself and into others as well, right? And then from that, the words ultimately becomes actions. Actions can be good actions, bad actions, or no action at all. And then the actions becomes habits, right? What you do on a consistent basis. It just starts building up and compounding over time. Therefore, that's what becomes habits is your actions times the consistency of it that translate into your habits, and over time based on your habits, those are sort of like ties into your values, what you value and prioritize the most in your life, and then the values and your habits is the equivalent to the outcome or currently where you're at, given you know at this present time, right? So the formula that I like to look at is really understanding the dots, which comes from our philosophy and our belief system, is what we think affects how we feel and how we act, right? So obviously, if you don't have good 8 hours of sleep, if you're eating junk food, if you're hungover, you it clouds your judgment on a lot of things. It affects your mood. When it affects your mood, you don't want to do certain stuff, and you just want to like stay in bed the entire day. Therefore, obviously, that affects your action where you're not really doing anything. And then that affects your habits. Maybe you get drunk every time. You use that as a coping mechanism to deal with depression, or to deal with, having a bad week. And that sometimes can lead you down to a dark path that you might not even notice until you start reflecting and understand the whys behind those thoughts, right? So that's where emotions come in. How we feel affects what we think and what we do, and then that ultimately turns into habits and behaviors. What we do affects how we think and feel, and then that kind of like it goes in a cycle, right? So for me to really understand, all three of these components, because these are very, very important on what makes up the outcome of your life and where you're currently at in your life, is the trigger points. Like what triggered that in the first place? What triggered you to be depressed? So you use alcohol as a coping mechanism. Therefore, it translates to you being hungover, and that affects your actions of like staying in bed the entire day and that not being productive, right? Understanding that, and then understanding how you should perceive it in a good or bad way, your perception of it, and then learning how to eliminate that. Because once you understand those trigger points, what trigger you to do certain stuff, you can eliminate it or look at it in a different way, right? So, for example, it's like if a employee left me, I that can be a trigger point where it just triggers emotional attachment, or it can trigger depression. In my mind, I'm like, damn, f you. I spent all this time training you, and then now you're not even being loyal to me, right? Therefore, it kind of like, it puts me in a bad mood, and it really caused me to think differently the next time I hire someone. Whereas I can do it in a more positive mentality. It's just like, okay, I understand. Maybe it's the best for them to leave. Maybe their end objective is to start their own business, or to take all the learnings that they have with the company. Therefore, I'm grateful that they actually been a part of our company and help us grow this company to where it is today, right? So you can't eliminate that type of thinking. Therefore, it creates a better perception on how you view everything, and the next time you hire, it's not a negative connotation that's tied to that action or tied to that specific circumstances in that case, right? So what affects our emotions? Emotions plays a big part of your action, and most importantly, the quality of your action. So understanding if it's bad emotions attached to a certain outcome, to a certain result, normally that would trigger a bad action, or it can trigger you to get mad. Therefore, again, it triggers how you react to certain stuff. So your attitude towards things, that's the word that I'm looking for. It affects your attitude ultimately, right? Your trigger points affect your attitude. Your attitude affects the action and the thought process that you have behind it. And therefore, that's the choice that you make and the decision that you make. And that can kind of like compound over time into a good path, or can lead you into kind of like a dark path, right? So your actions becomes your behaviors, becomes your habits and your outcome. And it can go in both ways, right? For example, it can go, small actions over time, small good actions over time is going to compound over time. And it's drastically, it might be slow at first, but at the same time, that's why you see druggies, like the first time they try meth, for example, it might not hurt them as much. They might be still in the same place, a 9 to 5 job. But over time, once they start smoking more meth, you can see, hey, they stop, going to work. They start feeding more. They start using all of their money to invest into drugs. And then now the mentality is kind of like all skewed, all messed up. And then, before you know it, they're homeless. They don't have no money coming in, right? As compared to someone else, it's just like, hey, the actions that you take might not, it might not have any sort of change at your life at the moment, but over time it compounds, right? Like you reading one page every day, you might not think that you're progressing in life, but you're taking a lot of the knowledge that you have and you're applying that in daily actions, and that compounds to your daily actions. And over time, you keep on working on your business, you become consistent. Obviously start working on your business, put x amount of hours, and then over time, it just grows. It might be $100,000 in a year, but you do the same thing. You become smarter, you start reading more, and then over time you might hit 1 mil a year, right? So what I'm saying here is that your philosophy, your belief system, the core of it, understanding what creates that belief system in the first place, will really affect your attitude and your outlook in certain stuff. And that's where perception comes in, and that affects your action and the results. And it can go both ways, and it can go into all areas of your life. Not only your compound interest normally can be tied to finances, the money that you deposit, it's going to grow over time based on your principal and reinvested profits. That also go with your health. Eating a hamburger today might not make you fat, but over time, if you eat it consistently, right, every day, then yeah, you are going to get fat. It's basic formula right there, right? It's basic understanding. And as well as business, with your relationships as well with other people, it's just like if you yeah, it's just understanding and knowing, being aware of it. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So it starts from the beginning, figure out the core, and then being aware of that. And that starts from your belief system, which is your outlook in life. Sometimes your belief system is created through, your parents' belief systems, like what they believe might not necessarily gets implant on you without you even knowing it when you're growing up. For example, it's just like my mom always think going to college and then also getting a white collar job, becoming an engineer or a doctor might be the best path in life, right? So I grew up and obviously I got my college degree. I got two degrees actually, and then I work a 9 to 5 corporate job, right? But then the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm following the belief system of my parents, right? And the way that I kind of like to analyze it is like I love them for sure, absolutely. They want what's best for you, but you have to understand you need to break out of the belief systems because their belief system is what got them to where they are today. And if it doesn't match the objective or the end goal of where you want to be, then obviously you can't. It doesn't align with your belief system because that isn't something that you really value. For me, my values and my principle in life is I want to have the time freedom to do what I want with my resources, with my time, with my money. And therefore, the only way to do it is kind of like being my own boss, running a company, doing something that's really fulfilling, that allows me to be creative instead of listening to anyone else. And that I can create value for the marketplace. So that sort of like when I switch my belief system by the influence of other people that I look up to, right? People that you look up to, like figure that out. Go on YouTube, check out your history, go on your newsfeed on Instagram, go on your Facebook, look at what your YouTube search history are, because those are the things that you pay the most attention to, where your focus goes, and most likely they are the ones that's influencing your thinking, right? So being aware of that, who you watch on social media, all of that is very important. That's why you want to make sure you follow the right people, the people that has the end objective of where you want to go, has the lifestyle, or has the you know where you want to be at a certain point, right? So that changes your way of thinking and the way that you process information, and then your perception is pretty much inherited. So making sure that you figure out what your core belief system is, and that can also derive from like a mix of personal experience and then also belief systems from your religion, and then also from your parents, and then from going to school and the people that you surround yourself with, your what you consume and the thoughts of other people, um, and whatnot, right? So I figure out that a lot of my values are tied to my parents' values, as well as some of the other values tied to influencers that I look up to in the past, but not necessarily look up to now. So figure out what your values are on a year by year basis, because it does changes, right? As you get smarter, as you grow, sometimes the values and the belief system that got you to one spot isn't going to necessarily get you to the next level, right? It can also come from childhood trauma, and then the basis of it is just understand that the smallest things in life really compounds, whether it's good and bad. And for you guys to really be aware of it is to recognize it and to understand, hey, why, what causes this sort of thinking in the first place. And then you want to make sure to just be aware to change it if it's taking you down the wrong path. So for example, it's just like vaping has been something that I've been doing for the past 4 years, and this year I just completely quit, right? And the way that I recognize it is just like the decisions behind it. It's just like, hey, it might give me a quick dopamine hit. It can satisfy me at the moment, but the long-term effect of constantly spending 30-40 bucks every 2 weeks to buy vape to have a quick dopamine and to feel like shit afterwards isn't going to yield me a great return to my health, to my finances, and then to overall as a person, right? So it's just recognizing those small little habits. And at the end of the day, where your focus go, energy flows, right? Because now that really ties into where your focus is and what you allow to influence the way that you make decisions or the way that you think. So making sure what I do is like I like to create what we call a filtering system, and that's part of the mental framework I'm going to talk about afterwards, towards the end. But just to give you a quick example, it's just like, right now in our life, we're constantly bombarded with things that takes up our energy. Our energy is what translate into our actions and then also to our decision making, and our decision making is pretty finite, right? Decision is your energy. Energy is pretty finite, meaning every day you only have so X amount of energy to utilize, and you want to make sure you use it as productive as possible. You want to make sure it's actually benefiting you and not like taking you down the wrong path or and whatnot. So a lot of people, I was a big victim, is there's a lot of viruses. The way that I look at viruses is like there are a lot of asks, there's a lot of like things that people ask from me, right? That's going to divert my energy. Energy is equals to focus, right? From what really matters to me, which is building my business, being creative, and then also building a fucking great team and a great company, and then making new products, etc., right? Making as much money as I could, and then also for my own health and own happiness and fulfillment. A lot of times we get bombarded with like what we call like notifications, right? Notifications from our phone, notification from different apps, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, Slack, text messages, right? All of those are distractions that takes away your energy. And let's just say you have 10, let's just put a number on your energy. Every day you have 10 energy, but every notification is going to take up one energy, right? And every time you do some sort of work in your business that's going to move up takes two energy, right? So over time, if you're giving yourself the ability to allow these notifications to take over you, right, you're diverting your energy to something else. And by the end of it, by the end, even by the afternoon, you run out of energy and you're not energetic anymore to really work on your business, right? And then you start becoming the virus. You start saying, you're the person that always say yes to things, and that takes away your focus from the business, etc. And what you want to do is create what we call a filtering system, because once we create a filtering system, you're blocking off all of those unnecessary things that takes your energy away from what's really important. And the way that you do it is by deleting your Instagram, unfollowing the people that obviously, always hit you up, saying no more, right? I think that's the biggest one. It's like, hey, can you do this now? No, I do it on my own time. I do it, or maybe schedule a time on my calendar and then just have it set. But right now, today, I'm focused on a very specific task that I planned on yesterday. I'm not going to let you take my energy away from me, right? So sometimes I do get mad, right? The way that I kind of like perceive it when people ask me to do stuff is just like, you're taking away energy from me, which I can best use to do things that makes me happy or help me, grow or, grow the business overall, right? So what we're going to do is go down to the filtering system. So again, understanding that energy is finite, so you want to use it wisely, put a number into it, make sure you can quantify it. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we can quantify our finances, our KPIs in our business, but we don't quantify our energy. And that's the most important part, because if you don't quantify your energy, then you don't have quality decisions, and then you can't, energy is decision. And if you don't make the right decision on the right things, then that's going to cause you, inspire you to a different path, right? So what I found works the best is having less decision, but making sure those decisions are more effective in terms of the outcome, right? So the only way to do that is by making less decisions, but making better and quality decisions overall, right? So for example, like the mental framework behind that, the subcomponent of it is making one decision that removes all decision making. So I'm just going to think of one on top of my head. It's, for example, like food, right? Every day you're making a decision on what type of food you want to eat, right? How do we eliminate that for, let's just say, the next month, or even the next 3 months, or even the next week, right? You guys can put a timeline to it. Obviously, you can, once when you're starting out, it can be a little bit tough, but as you work on it, you become a little bit better, right? Because I see myself spending 5 decisions per day on knowing, hey, should I eat this? Should I eat that? Do I go on Uber Eat? Do I go? There's so many decisions. There's like 7 different processes. If I document that into a standard operating procedure, it's just like, dude, it's complicated and it takes up so much mental energy from you. And by the time you think of like what you want to eat, half of your energy is gone for the day, and you can't even utilize it in the right way to, obviously benefit you in terms of like making more money or growing the business in this case, right? So So for example, like, yeah, I'm not going to make a three different decisions throughout the day to know what I want to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So what I did is I told myself for the entire month to eliminate decisions, or to eliminate, decisions on what to eat. I would just fast from 7 to 2. And making that decision is going to lead to better quality decision, because number one, I don't have to spend the morning thinking about what I want to eat. Number one, or going to Uber Eats, or even driving to the store, hopping into my car, dealing with traffic, getting out of the car, going to the grocery store, making sure I pick out the right things. If there isn't, then what do I do? Right? There's a ton of decisions involved. I eliminate that. And I also understand by fasting, it's going to allow me to think clearer. It's going to allow me to really be in my optimal performance and optimal mentality to make better actions or make better decisions. Therefore, it translates to better actions and quality of the work that I do, right? So you can see how this one decision kind of like eliminates that, but also help you optimize, other decisions for you in the meantime. And then the outcome of those decisions are pretty effective or efficient in that case, right? So going back to the food example, fasting, number one. Number two, I don't want to like cook. I don't want to like take stuff out of the fridge, look up a recipe. The decision of you looking to your phone, finding which recipe, that also takes a number of steps, etc. Right? I would just pretty much go to one of those meal prep companies and just set automatic recurring orders. Every week they deliver 7 to 10 orders for me, right? And it already calculate my calorie intake, the nutrition aspect of it, what my health goals are. You do it one time, that one decision that you make eliminates decisions for the entire month on knowing, what to eat for dinner, because it's meal prep. They deliver it to you. It's pretty streamlined. It's so efficient, right? So that's the example of it. And then for business, for example, it's just like every time I do some admin task, while that might not be the best decision for the business, everything is contextual, everything is based on context. But let's just say you hold a high executive, position in the company, or you're the CEO of the company and you're doing admin tasks, right? That's okay, right? But no, when you do that admin task, like it's probably going to repeat over and over and over. You still got to do it every time, but you can eliminate that admin task forever by just filming a quick little video and then sending that out to a virtual assistant or to one of your team members to take it over to you. So you do it one time, but the output of it, your team member would do it multiple times for you, right? So that's where leverage comes in. So understanding that, understanding the decision making process, eliminating it, knowing your energy is finite, it's going to tie into, how to filter notification out of your life, etc., saying no to a lot of things. It's drastically going to give you exponential growth. And that's why I say a lot of people growing so quickly is because they have a great filtering system and they know how to utilize their energy correctly in the right place at the right time, right? And then last but not least, simple life. The way that I'll look at it is, just to give you a quick example, I have a Tesla Model 3 for the past 3 years. And then given that, I started making a little bit more money, saving up, I always dreamt of like getting a Porsche, like a used Porsche 992, right? So I was looking around and then I was kind of like reading the reviews, understanding, people's experience of it. And it seems like a lot of work just going through the process of like, for seems like a lot of commitment, a lot of financial commitment, a lot of like maintenance, and then for just this quick phrase, because once you get into, because I understand once you try it out, and that's from learning from mentors and other people's experience, right? Is once you try something out, like materialistic things, you do it for like a 1 to 2 months. If it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like none of those matters. It just creates more complexity in your life, right? So going back to the example, it's like if I get a Porsche, right, I have to meet with the dealer. I have to make sure I finance. I have to make sure my credit score is good. I have to make sure I put this amount down deposit. I have to get oil change. I have to, it's just like it's so much thinking already. And if I could use that energy to put it into something that actually can help me grow the business and fulfill me even more, like I'd rather do that. My energy is best spent that way, right? like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying not to have nice things in life, but understand the consequences behind it, and also kind of like what you will feel once you have that. Because I know once I have it and I drive it for a month, it might give me a quick, ego check. I'm gonna be like, oh wow, on top of the world, I have a 911 or 992. It's just like, dude, at the end of the day, it's just a car. Like, if it gets me from point A to point B, then that's totally fine, right? I don't really care too much about it, right? So I already know the consequences and then also the outlook of how I will be feeling in the future once I have that thing. Therefore, I will eliminate all of those necessary phrases, steps, process in order to get that, and then having to deal with it afterwards. And just like, dude, just keep my life simple, right? Like, seeing, for example, like I see a lot of entrepreneurs that's once they start making money, they want to tap into a different business, and then that's more complexity. You have to hire team members, new processes, and that kind of like divert your attention from things that's actually making you money in the first place, and then that kind of like dilutes over time. And then this investment opportunity or this new business kind of like goes to shit. Then you're starting from scratch. You can eliminate all of that by being forward thinking, and really just putting more time in that decision making before actually committing to that action, right? So the way that I look at it, a simple life, less complexity, and also you can increase your income, stay stagnant, because once you start buying materialistic things, once you start up, you know, once you start making more money, you upgrade your lifestyle, which is again, you can if you're living in your parents' basement, etc. You want to get sorry, kind of cut off there, so I gotta re-record this or yeah, do it again. Yeah, but basically, I'm not saying, you can upgrade your lifestyle. Just do it in a way where you're still being simple about it. Like, obviously, if you're living in your parents' basement and you need to upgrade to somewhere to, obviously put yourself in a different environment, that's totally fine. It's not like you're splurging at the same time or splurging to the equivalent, the same ratio of like when you're making more money. It's because as you make more money, as you upgrade your lifestyle, you can't take on more risk in the business, right? And risk is what got your business from one point A to point B. And I see a lot of people, once they start upgrading their lifestyle, once they start making more money, it's like they need to keep up with their lifestyle. Therefore, they can't really focus on the things that truly builds infrastructure and systems in the business, and they just focus on sales and next month how I hit my target, so I need to pay for this for my lifestyle. You're not innovating. It causes you to not innovate as much because you're constantly chasing. You're in a, what we call, rabbit hole. You're digging yourself into a rabbit hole and you're going, it's the same thing over and over and over again, right? So basically what I'm saying is just keep a simple life. I like to have a simple life. I don't like to tell people too much about what I do, etc. I like to be a little bit low maintenance, right? I don't really care too much about cars, materialistic thing. I want to invest into, for me, like, for example, a decision that I made is, I really wanted to get into investment properties. I want to do two fixed this year. That was one of my goal. But I thought to myself afterwards, it's like, dude, from other people's experience, from what I'm learning, it's like I'm going into something that I have completely no knowledge about. It's gonna probably take away a lot of the time in my business. I don't even know if the capital that I'm putting up is gonna make a return, because I hear a lot of like bad things or things that can go wrong, and it just capitulate to so much more decisions that you're uncertain of. Whereas the decision that I'm making in things that already created me the results and are consistent with, right? I would rather put my decision, like the opportunity cost of your decision, and then knowing the outcome of it, right? The probability of it succeeding based on that decision is a lot higher given the decision I make on working on my business, etc. Right? So that kind of like leads into, once you have a filtering system, right? Knowing all of that, and then knowing, knowing that your energy is finite, knowing, not to allow complex materialistic things to get into the way of you making certain decision, because there's only finite decisions and energy that you can make on a per day basis. You move into learning how to think critically, right? Learning how to think on your own. Sometimes we use up so much of our energy that we just by default copy other people's thought process, right? So for example, it's just like, I think this is a big one, like investing. Like, you know sometimes we don't even do our research on the projects, etc. I was a victim of it. I actually lost like over six figure in a project in crypto because I didn't do the proper research. I was just defaulting my thinking because that's the easiest way to kind of like eliminate, you know, my having to do research and whatnot. I just follow what other people told me to do, and then that project ended up going to shit because I didn't do the proper research. I didn't give my own proper thinking, my own proper formula in the way that I kind of like, you know, do research on certain stuff, making my decisions, doing my own analysis, etc. Right. So again, what I'm trying to say here, we tend to default to easy thinking because we already have low energy, and then ultimately different results, different thinking, different results and behaviors, right? So for example, it's just like another one in business is like you see a competitor that's doing really well on the surface level on social media, right? But you don't understand how his backend works. So you assume that everything that he's posting on social media and on the surface level is exactly, you know, something that you should do. And that's obviously you're always going to be one step behind because they're always ahead of you and you're just copying them. Sometimes you just need to do your own analysis, and then that results in the way that you take certain actions. You might, the people why you last so long in business is because you're different from everyone else. And sometimes the people that you're copying, they might seem like they're doing really well on the surface level, but when you actually dig into the nuts and bolts of the business, they're actually losing money. So now you've been copying someone in the assumption that they are doing well and hoping that your business do well by copying someone, but it ended up, you know, not working to where you kind of like expected it to be, right? Next up is your core principles, values, relationships, and then mission statements. And that ultimately kind of like changes the behaviors and the thinking in a culture perspective. So, what you value, everyone has values. Recognizing what you value in life and what you prioritize is going to be different from what other people value and what they prioritize in life, right? So those, that is very important, knowing what you value, because a lot of that decision making really ties back to the priority of values that you have. So, you know, I have values in a relationship, you know, different things that we stand for, because that builds that, that's the infrastructure and that's the foundation that we use and the formula that we use whenever we think of a certain action or decision that we do in that context of a relationship, right? Also, in that's why there's company values, is because as company values, everyone that's part of the culture, everyone that's your team, they, you know, once they understand the value, it affects the way that they think and do certain stuff. And you want to make sure the value aligns with everyone, because if certain values doesn't align with everyone, that's why certain performance doesn't work well, or that's why there's lack of performance. That's why, you know, certain stuff doesn't go the way that you want it to be, is because there's no value in place to tie everything in together. And then what ties in all your values is your mission statement, your North Star with your relationship, with your personal life. What is the end goal? What is the objective? And then use your values to tie those objectives. And then those values dictate the decisions that you make, because that's the mental framework that you follow, right? So a good part of it is really studying decision patterns, understanding, you know, studying the grades. An example that I like to use is, you know, I'm trying to understand why a lot of people that are older than me, when they look back in their life and how they invest their money, a lot of them actually say just invest into S&P 500 and forget about it, right? And me being young, obviously, I can be a little bit more risk oriented. I can, you know, obviously invest a lot of money into a little bit more risky stuff, but then that's going to yield a greater return. But I'm leveraging the experience of, you know, smarter people in the future, is because they already went through that pattern or that sequence of events that happening that led them to saying, I wish I actually did this in the past. If I didn't do this, you know, I would have actually be in a better position. So I take those as kind of like feedback, and I also use that as, you know, experiences that I can tie back to how I make decisions today. Now I know the reason why they say that is because, number one, you know, a lot of times when you invest into these risky projects and you're already kind of like busy with your business, you're not going to be able to, you know, do 100% research on it. You're not going to be able to kind of like follow the market. Therefore, sometimes your investment goes into shit, and then you lose all your money, and then you start from ground zero again, right? They look at it as kind of like more of a compound effect thing. It might be slow return, but over time it's going to compound. And, you know, it's given like 10 years, you invest like, you know, 25,000 a year, you know, it's 30,000 a year. You're 100% going to become a millionaire, 8 to 10% in the S&P 500, right? Index funds, etc. So that's another example of just like following previous decision patterns and understanding why people are saying a specific thing or recommending a specific thing is because they actually went through the experience. And then you take all of that data set and then apply it to like, context to what you're currently facing. And then the mental model is like, you want to make sure, again, you define your North Star, what your goals and objective are. You want to start thinking long term. Short term thinking is 1 year, long term is 5 to 10 years. And that can also affects how you make decisions today. For example, is just like right? One unsatisfied customer, for example, short-term thinking is just like, that's $5,000. I don't want to like refund him, etc. Long-term thinking is just like, okay, he might do a lawsuit against us. He might be unhappy, and that can create a reputation in our company, and that would cause our company to have a bad rep, cause us to get bankrupt because of lawsuits, etc. Right? 5 to 10 years is thinking, okay, let's just make that decision to refund them, keep them happy at least, and not put ourselves into those potential consequences of what might happen, which might lead into other decisions that you need to make, right? So one decision is going to solve everything. You just got to make sure you do it strategically and think long term about it. There's half-life decisions, decisions that expire and it repeats over and over. For example, doing administrative tasks for a company, it repeats, right? And then also, but if you do it in a way where, hey, you film it and you delegate it to someone else, it doesn't repeat anymore for you. Repeat for someone else or repeat for someone that fits a better role in that case, right? Food example, the decision to make, you're hungry, you make the decision to eat at Chipotle right now. 6 hours after, you have to make another decision to understand what you want to eat. So that decision pretty much expired. You want to think of something, a decision that's going to help you make decisions for the rest of the month, rest of the week, which is by meal prep, having a meal prep company send over food that you already want to eat, that fits into your macros, etc. Right? So learning about that, and then lastly, your ratio risk to undo, understanding the input and the output and the leverage of your decisions, right? Each hour that you put in, you don't want 1 to 1, you want 1 to 10, right? So for example, doing sales, that's 1 to 1, right? I can sell one person, get them into our system, cool, that's 1 to 1. I can train, or 1 to many would be, I train my sales manager, right, one time, and my sales manager oversee the entire sales department. That's 1 to many. Now these people are trained to take on sales calls. 10 to 15 people, 10 to 15 sales rep translate to 20 customers per sales rep that can understand it. So that's 1 to many, right? And then understanding kind of like how you can undo a certain decision that you make. Is like, okay, if I'm going to start this new product or this service, what does the consequences look like? And then how fast can I undo it where it doesn't take a drastic, approach and affecting me, etc. Right? Understanding how quickly you can undo it. What is sort of like the target and the cutoff for certain stuff? It's just like, okay, if I really release a new product in 3 months is the timeline, it doesn't produce any sales, most likely my energy is better focused on something that's already consistent or try out a different product, right? So the undo aspect of it is also very important. So yeah, I know it's a lot right now, but if you guys can tie all of that in together, that would be great. But see you guys in the next video.